Everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on attracting the right job candidates. My name is Mackenzie Keller with the CSG Pool, and I am joined by Brian Haggerty, a project consultant with CPS HR. For those of you not familiar, CPS HR is a client-centered HR management and consulting firm that is celebrating its 40th year as a self-supporting public agency. CPS HR is a trusted partner for HR consulting and comprehensive HR solutions that drive advanced organizational performance. Our presenter, Brian Haggerty, is a seasoned HR professional with over 15 years of compensation and classification experience in both private and public sector organizations. Today's presentation will focus on how to create compelling job postings and how to improve the hiring experience for job candidates so that you end up with the best of the best. If you have questions throughout the webinar, you can put them in the chat so that our presenter can see them, and then we will have some time at the end for you to ask questions. Without further ado, Brian, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mackenzie. So I'm excited to be here. I've been in the water industry for over 20 years doing HR work, both recruiting and class and comp. So when they asked me to speak to you folks about this, and they said it's special districts in Colorado, I'm like, those are my people. This is exactly the people that I interact with all the time. So excited to be here to talk to you guys about this. And although I'm a class and comp person now, I did recruiting for over 10 years at Denver Water. So very understanding of the whole hiring process and attracting candidates and that kind of thing. And I was able to get out and avoid those hiring managers, which I'm sure you guys all know about. So, but a bunch of information here. I'm going to try to get through it, share lots of examples. And I will tell you that all of the examples I'm going to use I took from out of state because I didn't want to embarrass or get anyone excited by picking something from their agency. So everything I'm going to show you is from out of state, but there's lots of great examples here in the state of different people that are doing a really good job when it comes to trying to attract candidates. So if we're going to talk about Colorado, I think the first thing we need to do is talk a little bit about what's going on in Colorado, right? And so let's talk about the Colorado job market, because this is where we're competing. This is where we're trying to find that talent, right? So when we look at unemployment rates, you can see that's that blue line. You can see it's slowly creeping up. It's been climbing it's up about 4.7% in February. And that's up from 3.9% in the previous year. So we're definitely seeing unemployment slowly start to rise. And I should preface, before I go too much further into what's going on in the Colorado job market, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. Like usually I have a real good feel for what's going on with the economy and how things are changing and shifting because I'm watching this, for pay reasons and that kind of thing. I got no clue. I think all of us right now are throwing darts blindly at a board, hoping that we're right when it comes to predictions. So, but currently, as the way we look at it in Colorado right now, we're seeing unemployment on the rise, and we're not seeing a lot of job growth. Here in Colorado, job growth has been very, very flat for the last year. Compared to the United States, we're seeing job growth on a slight uptick of about 1.2%. So we are seeing job growth in the country. We're just not seeing a lot of job growth here in Colorado. But despite all of that, with all the boomers moving out of the job market, as they're retiring and, enjoying their the time that they, are no longer having to work, we have this huge skill gap and numbers gap. A good example is if we talk about engineers, for example, you had over 200 million engineers that were baby boomers that were in the job market compared to Gen Xers, my generation. We only have about 2 million, about 20 million engineers. So huge gap in numbers, which is what's creating a lot of these openings. So right now it's about 2 for every job opening. There's 2 job openings for every unemployed employee in Colorado. So obviously there's still that pinch to try to find people. And we have a huge quit rate. So we're the 3rd highest in the country when it comes to people that are quitting their jobs to move on to other jobs. So there's a lot of people here in Colorado that are looking for other opportunities, are looking to move out of our organization into another organization. And so we have to figure out, and we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about retention, but we also have to figure out how we're going to keep people in our organizations, right? But we're going to focus today on 3 things, and that is how we're going to create compelling job postings to get people excited about applying for jobs with us. We're going to talk about leveraging online and offline channels. And then we're going to spend some time talking about improving the candidate experience, which I think is one of those things that oftentimes we don't think about, but it's a way that we really can drive home a lot of that ability to get people. Because what I always tell people, working in the public sector as long as I have, being a comp guy, I always tell people we're never going to win it when it comes to money. Like, we can't outbid, the big consulting firms for engineers and drafters and some of those kinds of things, but we can position ourselves in a really good, strong place that people want to come work for us. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is how we're going to do that, how we're going to attract those people. And if you guys have questions as I go through, feel free to ask any questions. I'll be happy to answer them as we go. So let's talk about creating compelling job postings. Number one thing is be transparent. Next, we want to highlight that company culture. What is it that makes us different? What is different about us? And why should people want to come work for us? We want to use engaging language. We want to optimize our job postings for search engines. And then we want to include some videos and photos. And I'm going to show you examples of each one of these things as we go, to just kind of help highlight what we're talking about. So when we talk about transparency, one of the things that I always tell people, working in the public sector, is if you are not genuine, if you are not transparent with our employees, I always tell people that are coming in from the private sector, I'm like, this is one of the most important things. If you are not genuine and transparent with our employees, they will see through that and you will lose credibility. Like, transparency is so important. It's become such a core principle of who we are as an organization here in the public sector. So there's an old story about an HR manager who dies and goes to heaven. And the HR manager comes to St. Peter, and St. Peter says, this is different. We've never had an HR manager actually qualify for heaven. So we're kind of at a loss as to what to do. So what we thought we'd do is we'd let you, spend a day here in heaven and spend a day downstairs, and then you can pick where you want to go. So the HR manager's like, sure. So the first day, the next day he comes to St. Peter and they put him on the elevator and he goes downstairs, and, he's there in hell, and there's a big party. All his friends are there. They're all having pizza and singing, dancing, doing karaoke. It's a great time. Has a wonderful day. The next day he spends the day in heaven, and they're playing their harps and singing their hosannas. And, it's really nice and peaceful. So at the end of the day, St. Peter says, all right, so you've experienced both. Where would you like to spend the rest of eternity? And the HR manager goes, I think I want to go downstairs. And St. Peter says, we kind of thought you might. So tomorrow morning, just come take the elevator downstairs and you'll be good. So the next day, the HR manager takes the elevator downstairs and the doors open up and people are being tortured and there's gnashing of teeth and pulling of hair. And, it just looks horrible. And the HR manager turns to the devil and says, what is going on? And the devil says, yesterday you were a candidate. Today you're an employee. Right. And I tell that story, because really what we want to do in the recruiting process is be really true to who we are and what these jobs are that we're putting out there for people to come work for us. Right. We want to give them a real good understanding of what our jobs are, what the work that they're going to be doing. So that way they're getting what they signed up for, which is really, really critical if we want to keep people. Right. So here's a good example of transparency in a job posting. This is King County, so this is Seattle. And they've got a public records officer. And I do this when I write job descriptions, when I help managers write job descriptions all the time. And that is at the end of each one of these bullets, you can see a percentage, letting the job seeker see how much time they're going to be spending at each one of these duties and tasks, right? And, it's a real good way. I always have my managers do this when we write job descriptions because it helps me figure out exempt, non-exempt status and some of those kinds of things. But for a job seeker, what a blessing to be able to see exactly where you're going to be spending your time, how much time you're going to be spending on these different things. Because, if administrative support is not something you want to do and you're going to spend 15% of your time doing it, maybe this isn't the job for you, right? So a real good example of transparency in a job posting, really explaining and helping the job seeker see exactly what this job is and what their tasks and duties are going to be throughout that day. So this is a good example of that transparency piece. So let's talk about culture, right? And we all know when we talk about culture, there's the visible culture that people can see. And then there's all that invisible stuff under the water, right? All the things, the biases, the authority, our values, our ethics, our openness, right? And lots of times when we talk about culture, what we're really talking about is how are decisions made in your organization? How independent are people able to work? How accepting of failure are we, right? Are we a place where we uh, um, encourage people to take risks, or are we a place where we don't want people to take risks and we need them to do the things the way that we've always done those kinds of things, right? Because we all know that the public has a different perception of us as public entities than who we really are, right? People always think, oh, if you work for the government, you must be slow and lazy and all these kinds of things. There's a lot of that kind of sentiment out there. But we know when we're, as a public sector person who's done recruiting for years, we have to do 3 times as much work when it comes to the recruiting process than, with somebody in the private sector. I remember when I first started working at Denver Water years ago, my HR director was talking to me about recruiting, and I said, we really need to speed up our recruiting process. And she said, well, how fast could you recruit people when you worked in the private sector? And I was like, well, we'd hire people the very next day. And she was like, oh goodness, no, we have so many more steps and so many checks and balances because we want to make sure we're making those right decisions, right? In the public sector, you're a little bit, there's a lot more scrutiny on what we're doing than in the private sector, where you hire somebody and fire them 2 days later. It's less of an issue. In the public sector, we really do some hand wringing lots of the times when it comes to selection. So we want to highlight that culture. And here's an example from Long Beach in California of their director of financing post. And what I liked about this posting was that About Us section really drives home who the city of Long Beach is, what this job is, that they're the port, they have all this traffic, they're focused on green policies, really trying to give a real good idea of what this job is, right? And as the director of finance, how they're going to be involved in that, right? So we want to involve that culture piece in it because it's really, really important for people, a job seeker, to see, if I'm working there, am I going to fit in? Is this something that I'm going to enjoy? Or is it going to be a position where maybe there's going to be a lot of, micromanaging or not a lot of decision making? So that's one of those things I think the more we can highlight who we are as an organization is always helpful. We want to use engaging language. And we talk about this for job seekers and job postings, right? We want to use language that is going to engage the reader, get people excited about this, right? So we want to be very careful and deliberate in the words that we use in our job postings so that people are attracted. They want to be part of our organization. This sounds exciting, right? And so here's an example from East Bay Mud. They're the water utility in San Francisco. And you can see I've highlighted some of that engaging language, right? Join a knowledgeable and motivated team who take pride in doing quality work, adds value, committed to responsible stewardship, some real engaging language. So the job seeker, as they're reading this, is like, oh, this sounds really cool, right? Because we know that we have a little bit of a hurdle to overcome because people don't necessarily think, oh, I want to go work for a public sector agency. We want to get over that hump and get them excited about working for us because we know that in our organizations, we're offering them unique opportunities that they can't find in the private sector. We have a lot of things, a lot of arrows in our quiver when it comes to drawing people in and retaining people that private sector just doesn't have. And so we want to attract them to us so that way they're excited about applying for our jobs. And then we want to optimize for search, right? We live in a digital age. We want people to be able to find our job postings. So I've got a list here of things to do and things not to do. So things to avoid when we're creating our job postings for search engines. We don't want to use fancy titles like Excel Wizard or Coding Ninja, just because those are not industry standards. So if I'm looking for a coding job, I'm not going to type in Ninja in the search engine. It's just not what I'm going to be doing, right? And I know this is disappointing because you guys all want to be chief people officers, right? Which is one of those crazy titles that we use in HR nowadays, which I still don't understand what a chief people officer is, but it sounds very important. Another thing we want to avoid, using terms that don't clearly define the roles, such as like SE3 or tech guru, right? But let's use language that they can understand, that search engine can pick up. If that SE3 is a structural engineer, use structural engineer. Don't use SE3. That no one's going to know what that is. Using titles that don't actually reflect the responsibilities of the role, right? This is one of those where, we're calling the janitor an engineer or something like that. That's just not really helpful. We want our job titles to be good descriptors of what that work is. And lots of times what I'll do is I'll actually go into a job engine and look at other job postings for the job I'm going to post to see what language they're using and what titles they're using, just so that way I can be responsible and make sure that I'm putting in the best thing. And then including compensation in the title. And I don't typically see this, but sometimes you'll see this where they'll actually put numbers in that title, and search engines will struggle with that. So we want to avoid doing that. So what are some things we do want to do, right? Use industry standard terms for titles like software engineer or project manager, things that people are going to be able to find easily. Include key skills or technologies. If you want them to know the programming language Python, or you want them to have a CPA, include that in your posting so that way the search engine can pick those things up. Use clear language, relevant keywords. And then lastly, like I just said before, review job search engines and see what other titles people are using, especially in certain industries. Like my public affairs people, I swear they would change their title every 6 months. They always wanted to be something new. And I was always like, I don't care what you put on your business card. I really don't. In my HRIS system, this is what you are. But if you want to use some other fancy term that is more in sync with what the current industry is using, go right ahead. And the same thing applies to job postings. If there's new language that's being used, there's nothing to stop you from using that in your advertisement as the title, knowing that they're going to be an SE3 when they get hired on, because that's what's in our HRIS system, right? All right, so let's talk about posting, job posting videos, because this has become super, super trendy and super, super powerful. We know that in this TikTok age that we live in, that people are drawn to videos. And so I know my public affairs people here at Metro, they do a ton of videos, like 2 or 3 videos every week we're pushing out on social media and different things to make people see that working here is a great place to be in, and it's something that people want to be part of. So let's talk about job posting videos and just kind of go over some highlights of things that you want to do to create a good video. So define the goals and have a script before shooting. And this is one of those things that anybody who's done any kind of recording, any kind of that you think, oh, I'll just wing it, and then you get in that video and you're saying 50 million times, or you forget where you're going with your words or something like that. So have a script, have an idea, talk through that ahead of time. What is it we're trying to do? What is it we're doing here? So that way everyone's really clear, right? Make sure the video is of good quality. And this is less of an issue nowadays because all of our phones have such great cameras in them. But make sure whatever camera you're using, sorry, I'm going to cough. Make sure that whatever video you're using, it's going to be good quality. In this day and age, people expect the video to look clear, to be, to be focused, some of those kinds of things. So make sure whatever camera you're using, that you know how to use it. Do a couple, trial runs to make sure you know what you're doing, so that way it comes out looking good. Keep the video short and sweet. We live in the TikTok age. Anything more than 10 minutes, people are never going to make it to the end of that video. Unfortunately, anything more than 5 minutes, you better have something that's really engaging and compelling to draw people in. Typically, you want your videos to be about 3 to 4 minutes, something kind of short and sweet that's going to grab their attention, get them excited about the job, but also leaving them wanting more, right? You want them to be like, oh man, I wish I knew more, instead of the opposite, which is they turn off the video halfway through because they've decided that, the CFO who's talking in the video is too boring. Include important information, answer candidate questions. The whole reason that they're watching this video is to understand more about this job, understand more about your organization, about that career path. So make sure that we're including important information in that to help them understand and answer some of those questions that they might have. Feature employees at different levels in your company and showcase your company culture. There's nothing wrong with having your CEO or general manager, intro the video. But we want to see different levels of employees, especially those lower level employees. That's what's going to draw people to see what's their team look like. Who are they going to be working with? What are those people like? Because we all know they're not going to be working with the general manager probably very often. So who are the people they're going to be working with? That's who we need to have in that video, and we want to be featuring. Different videos for different roles. If you're doing a role for an executive, it's going to be very, very different. It's going to be focused on the strategy and vision of the organization. Well, if I'm doing one for a technician, it's going to be more about what are the career development opportunities? What are the paths for them to grow and to be better, right? So we want different videos and different styles for our different audiences. We want to make it authentic and exciting, right? Get people that are good, that are going to be good on camera, that are extroverts. Let them talk through things and be authentic with stuff. So that way they know that the viewer is drawn into that because, Kyle is so engaging and so excited about working for us. Let's get Kyle on video so that way he can give some of that information, that excitement to the viewer. And then lastly, we want to end it with a clear call to action. Apply for our jobs, come work for us, be part of our team, whatever that is. We want to give people that excitement to now click on careers and post your application so that way you can work for us too, that kind of thing. And then lastly, share it relentlessly. There is nothing wrong with sharing it on all your different social media platforms, your careers page, all kinds of different places. Get that message out there so people will find it. All right, so let me show you a couple examples here. The first one is the village of Wakanda, Illinois. And they're going to talk a little bit about their snow removal. And I think they do a really good job here. So we'll go ahead and start this video.
I want to personally thank everyone for taking the time to watch the first Village of Wakanda Services Showcase. These informational videos will give you an inside perspective on the various services provided by the village. Wakanda residents, welcome to Wakanda Public Works.
As one of the largest departments in the village, Public Works is responsible for many essential operational, maintenance, and repair duties. Public Works provides emergency response services such as ice control and snow removal. Please join us as we meet a few staff members and learn more about snowplow operations.
The Village of Wakanda subscribes to various weather forecasting apps to help monitor weather conditions 24/7. Anytime snow or ice is in the forecast, the superintendent and I are in constant communication as we assess the operational needs to ensure safe road travel. When a weather event is confirmed, the team is advised and preparations are made so that we can be out on the streets within a half hour of a call-up. Each of our drivers has one of 12 designated routes to ensure that snow and ice removal is efficient and completed at roughly the same time. Once we have all the roads cleared and the roads are safe for travel, staff heads to their designated shoveling areas. We are responsible for shoveling sidewalks that are adjacent to the Village of Wakanda properties, including Village Hall, the municipal parking lot, community development, police department, and the Citizen Activity Center.
Hello, I'm Berto Reyes. It is critical for residents to adhere to the village ordinances during snow events. Parking on street during a snowfall of 2 inches or more is prohibited. In areas where there is on-street parking, It is not only a hazard, but it is also a liability for plow drivers to have to plow around parked vehicles. Due to the nature of plowing, cars parked in the streets will be plowed in, causing a headache for the residents, delays in completing the route, and extra work for the drivers. Another important ordinance to mention is the unlawful deposit of snow on the streets. Neither residents nor contractors are allowed to shovel, blow, or plow snow out into the street. Once the road is plowed by the village and the salt has been dropped, pushing snow out into the road prevents the salt from doing its job, causing hazardous areas for all drivers. Finally, if you are able to clear snow away from any fire hydrant near your home, a perimeter of 3 feet with access to the roadway is best. In the event of a fire, every second counts.
My name is Jeff Lowe. I'm a maintenance service technician with the Village of Wakanda. We are often asked, why can't we lift or turn our plow blades to avoid buildup on driveways? Lifting or turning plow blades at each of the thousands of driveways would significantly delay the completion of snow plowing and place additional financial burden on taxpayers. We understand the residents' frustrations, but unfortunately, it is unavoidable. It is also a safety concern as the drivers cannot see if children are playing in the snow pile, which they should never do.
thank you for taking the time to learn a little more about the Village of Wakanda snowplow operations. Our crews put in long hours and hard work to keep the roads we all travel as safe as possible. Please give them the room to work and have patience as they do their routes. Remember, we are all in this together.
And cut.
Perfect.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Village of Wakanda's Services Showcase. And a special thank you to everyone at Wakanda's Public Works for making this video possible. Don't forget to follow to see new episodes when posted. Also, make sure to bash that like button.
All right, so a really creative idea, right? Showing the public works in Wakanda, showing what they do, how they do it, highlighting different levels of employees, kind of a really fun video. And let's think about what the goal of that video was. It was twofold, right? One was, this is how we do things, and it's public information to get the public understanding of why they snowplow and how they snowplow, some of those kinds of things. The other part of it is, when you're posting for new, drivers to work in public works, this video is right there so people can see who it is they're going to be working for, what the culture is. It was kind of fun, very authentic, very genuine. Like, you had different levels of supervisors and employees showing them exactly how they do their work. So great job there, kind of highlighting a lot about, the city of Wakanda, which I always thought, was where, Black Panther lived, but obviously it's in Illinois. So now the next video I want to show is City of Gresham, Oregon. I really found this video really, really good, just because it really draws you in to why you should want to work in Gresham. So I'm going to let them play this, and then we'll move on to some other stuff.
Public Works, City of Gresham Operations Center. For me, this is where it all started. As a young child, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. Played baseball from 4 to 18 years old, and it was my passion. But life, it had different ideas. As you might have guessed, I didn't end up in the major leagues. After high school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do in life. I worked a little construction here and there and discovered I liked working with my hands and outdoors, which is why some of my friends and family encouraged me that I should apply for a seasonal position with the city of Gresham. So I did, and for me, it was a game changer. I ended up here as a seasonal worker in the Public Works Department right here in my hometown, Gresham, Oregon. I loved it. Working at the city reminds me of being on a team. The whole city, not just my department. We're all one big collaborative team.
Taking care of all the things that need to be taken care of.
We save the city one catch basin at a time.
All this work going on around me, we're pouring concrete for new ADA sidewalk ramps to ensure the citizens of Gresham can get around safely. This is why I love my job. In Gresham, we care about each other. We come together to just get things done.
I've always admired my older sister's smart choices. She works for the feds, 28 years and counting. Me? I grew up wanting to be a marine biologist. I studied environmental science in college and needed an internship to get my degree. When I stumbled upon a post for the City of Salem Public Works Department, I thought, Why not give public service a try like my big sis? Practically, it made no sense for me to apply as a single mom to 2 young boys living in Gresham. But I applied anyway, and after one awesome interview, I got the job. I worked there for 6 months, and I loved it. Of course, the driving back and forth was insane, but I walked away from that job knowing that I wanted to work for another city. How awesome would it be if it was Gresham? So I started checking the City of Gresham's website for opportunities and saw they needed seasonal employees. I applied for parks. Why not? I love the outdoors. And boom, I ended up in transportation, working on the newly formed concrete crew. I had never done concrete work in my life, but got out there on the job site and I learned.
Thank you. Public works jobs are definitely not desk jobs. Started out as a seasonal in the transportation department. Mostly, I learned on the job, and there were lots of people willing to show me the ropes. We worked hard, and I made a lot of lifelong friends. So when I was offered a full-time position with the city, it was a no-brainer. Now I've been on the job for just over 2.5 years, and I've moved from a seasonal employment position to a full-time code compliance inspector. And I'm out in the field all day, tagging and towing reported vehicles in the morning and re-inspecting property cases in the afternoons. I love this job, especially knowing that the work I do daily throughout the entire city is making a huge difference in the livability of our residents. The most important thing I've learned is that the city of Gresham is a city that never sleeps. It's a big family here.
I've loved having him on the team, and he can be a little sassy sometimes, but that's what we love about him.
That's our department.
I can go on and on about my awesome fellow employees, but it's really about what I'm doing for the city and its residents. This place is my home, and most Gresham residents are highly grateful and appreciative for the work that we do. Now I'm training to become a rental housing inspector. In fact, this is my 3rd week in my new full-time job. I inspect rental units around the city, making sure they are safe and healthy places to live. In the afternoon, I'm back at the computer, updating case files and getting ready for the next day. In fact, after a few weeks of intense studying, I just took the test and obtained my property maintenance and housing inspector certification, which is required for my new job. This is somebody who really made a difference. Hey, Ray! To hire seasonals, you have a slew of applications on your desk. So I just was curious, what made you kind of pick me out of that pile?
We're going to be that person that motivates the team and gets everybody out that door and working hard. And you even said it yourself, Amy. I don't know what I'm doing, but let's go do it.
It's empowering to be surrounded by strong, intelligent women that work in public service. Every day I'm reminded to always leave my options open. You never know which doors are going to open for you.
All right, awesome video, right? Real good testimonials by the employees themselves, them talking through things, great examples of showing different levels of employees doing the different work. And I really love the fact that this video highlights the career path, right? I started as a seasonal and now I'm doing this. I started here and now I'm doing this. Really, as a job seeker, you're like, hey, I could go work at Gresham and, just the job I get, I can become something else too. So really good highlight of that development path, which is one of the things that we know employees really look for, is that opportunity to grow and be developed. There are 2 more videos here. I'm not going to share those just because you don't want to watch videos all day. You're here to hear me talk about this stuff, but this deck will be available to you so you can look at those other videos if you want to see other examples of people doing this. All right, so let's talk a little bit about leveraging online and offline channels. Job boards, social media, employee referrals, industry events, and our career pages, right? So posting on job boards, and this is very similar to what we just talked about when we were talking about making this search-friendly job postings. But make sure you condense that job title to something that's understandable. Here in Colorado, we have equal pay for equal work, so we already post our salary ranges. But for private sector, this is a big step for them. They're not used to doing that. We want to highlight that key information. What is it that a job seeker really needs to know? And what I always tell people is when we're writing job descriptions, those top 3 duties need to be the things that they do either the most or the most important part of their job. And the reason I tell our managers when we write job descriptions to do it that way is as a job seeker, when you're looking at that, a job seeker will read the first 3 duties and make a decision at that point whether or not they're going to apply for this job. So if that job isn't really about what those top 3 duties are, that's going to mislead people, right? So let's make sure we're highlighting that right information. And then let's make sure we have a clear understanding of how to apply for our jobs so people don't get lost in our process, because sometimes the application process can be a little trickier than what we want. Social media. In this day and age, we need to be out there. We need to be posting videos. We need to be posting, all kinds of different things so people are seeing our job posting, knowing that we're hiring. You can see here the city of San Diego. Let me share this if I can. Sorry. All right. Well, I'm trying to share. There it is. Sorry. I found it. So you hear the city of San Diego. This is their Facebook page, right? You can see they've got all kinds of videos and things here, things about job posting, information, testimonials and videos, all kinds of stuff here on their Facebook page. If we go, if I share the next one, all right, I lost my document. Hold on. There we go. If we look at their Twitter feed, right? So again, I go to share and I show you their Twitter page. You can see a lot of the same information, right? You can see this is all here. So there's stuff here from the city of San Diego, all about the different stuff that they're doing, lots of different information. People hook onto different, they hook onto different social medias. Some people use Instagram, some people use Twitter, some people use LinkedIn. So let's make sure that we're showing them the right information. So that way they in different places, so that way they can find that. All right. Mackenzie, can you help me find my deck again? There we go. All right. I won't click on Instagram because you guys get the idea. But make sure that we're using all those different social media avenues so that way people can find our jobs. And lots of times you can even set up links from those so they can go right from that to your job posting, your careers page to be able to do that kind of stuff. Employee referrals. We know it's hard to find people. It is very difficult in this job market to find people. Our employee referral programs, we need to be really investing in those. So that way our good employees are inviting other people to come work for us. So lots of things that we make mistakes with our employee referral programs. One, we treat referrals like any other applicant. Let's make sure that employee knows that we're super thankful, super grateful that they, referred somebody to us. Make sure that we are reaching out to them and making sure that they know that, hey, I saw that applicant that you sent us, we're going to close that job next Thursday. So we'll take a look then and see if they're a good match, right? So let's make sure that we're treating them differently than we treat all of our other applicants. Don't let your HR department be a black hole, right? And we hear this all the time from employees who have referral programs that are become disillusioned with them is that, yeah, I sent somebody here and I don't know whatever happened. They never got a call back. They never got reached out to, we don't want that. We don't want that reaction. We want employees to be excited about getting, candidates to us. We want them to become part of that process of bringing in good talent. So we want to make sure that they know each step of the way what the process is, what's going on, how that applicant's doing. We don't have a strategy with referrals. We just kind of hope that they happen, But if we have an actual strategy about, getting the information out there to people, getting, people to know that, hey, we have a referral program. You can earn some extra money. You can, get this if you, refer somebody that gets hired. We need to have a strategy around our referral programs. Don't create so many rules. I mean, for goodness sakes. And the same thing goes with the money part of it, right? Well, we want to have all these rules when it comes to money and giving people money. It costs us hundreds and maybe thousands of dollars to find a good candidate for a job. You talk to your talent acquisition people, they can tell you how much money we spend trying to find good people. I would much rather give that money to an employee than give that to some job board or something else, right? So the more we can make that easier for our employees, less rules, and quit worrying so much about that $300 or $500 we're giving to our employees, the better off we're going to be. And the more our employees are going to feel engaged and feel valued and be excited about getting us candidates that might be able to fill that job. And we don't provide feedback. Like, if Bill submitted Mary's referred Mary to us, well, let's tell him why Mary didn't get selected for the interview. Let's give some feedback so that way he understands, and he understands why that decision was made, instead of it just being this nebulous thing that HR doesn't talk to us, right? Let's be open. Let's be transparent. Let's share with them so that way they understand and they know that, hey, you know what? Mary wasn't a good fit for this, but I think we're going to have a job open up in two months that I think she'd be a really good fit for, or you see Bill, when that job opens up, you say, hey, is your friend Mary still looking for a job? Because we just opened that job up that I was telling you about, and I think she'd be a good match. So, let's make sure we're giving feedback to our employees so that way they feel valued. And then lastly, get your leaders out there driving the message. Get your CEOs, your chief operating officers, whoever they are, have them talking about the importance of referrals and how we want employees to refer people to us. It is so hard to find people for jobs. And who knows, if the economy goes bad, it may get easier, but we should be always trying to put a big emphasis on our referral programs, because if Bill's a good employee, Bill's probably not going to recommend Mary unless Mary's probably pretty good quality too. So we want our employees sharing with us good referrals. Attend industry events. I saw somewhere where 75% of people who get jobs still get their jobs from who they know. So we need to be out there at industry events, at job fairs, doing things, talking to people, connecting, building those connections. So that way we are building up that sourcing so that we can find really good people. I don't know how many times we open up a job here at Metro and somebody will be like, I know somebody I met at a conference 2 months ago. I'm going to reach out to them and send them the job posting. We have that happen all the time, right? So make sure that we're reaching out to those people, those connections we're making, because lots of times that's how we find people. And then lastly, have a strong careers page, right? And we all have good career pages. I'll show you a couple here. Here's Portland's career page. Let me just share this with you. My screen. Here's Portland's Career Center page. And what I really liked about this Career Center is, how do I apply? What's the policies? How does pay and benefits work? There's a lot of really good information here. There's videos and photos that are really going to get people excited. And if I'm going to apply for a job at the city of Portland, there's some really good stuff here to help me in that process, which is really, really critical, right? If you can bring me back, Mackenzie. And then let me show you St. Louis's. Sorry, I should have had these links up earlier. Let's see here. Here's St. Louis. And again, great photos, great information about how to find jobs. And one of the things I really liked about this one is they have featured their job posts right here. The fewer clicks that you can make people do, the better off we are, right? So here, I can go right here and I can immediately see that they're looking for a commissioner of violence prevention. That's exactly the job I'm here to find. I don't have to go searching for it. So it's right here, easy to locate, which is what we want. We want it to be an easy process for our job seekers to find and apply for our jobs. We don't want to make it hard. It's hard enough to find these people. Don't make it harder for them to actually see those jobs. All right, Mackenzie, if you'll bring me back, I promise I won't share any more screens. All right, so let's talk about candidate experience here in the last 10 minutes of this. Candidate experience is so important. Here you can see some stats here. 83% of candidates say a negative interview changed their mind about the role with the company. 60% of job seekers quit an application halfway through because it's too tricky or complex. And 70% of companies reported an improvement in the quality of hires after they prioritized that candidate experience. So how do we fix our candidate experience? And there's a couple different things we can do here. We can respond promptly. When somebody applies for our jobs, we need to get back to them, let them know that, hey, we got your application. Thank you for applying with us. Be transparent and honest. Again, that transparency, you've heard me say that so many times today, so critical that we let people know exactly what's going on in the process. Give them a positive interview experience. I'll talk a little bit about this, about how to do that. And then follow up. Let them know what the results were. Let them know the job is closed. Let them know that someone has been hired, those kinds of things. So that way they feel like they're informed. I mean, there's nothing more disappointing when you're excited about a job and you apply for it and you don't get it. There's nothing worse than when you apply for a job and you just don't know what happened. I remember when I applied to Denver Water 20 years ago as an HR generalist, I put my application in. They didn't get back to me for 3.5 months. And when the recruiter called me up, the first thing they said was, "Are you still looking for a job?" And I said, "Well, I've been employed this whole time. But I thought your opportunity would be a good one." They're like, "Oh, good. We've been really delayed on this." And I was just like, I applied for that 3.5 months ago, right? So let's not do that. Let's make sure that people know where they're at in the process. Lots of our talent acquisition systems, you can actually see where you're at in the process. So that way they have that information so they're not left wondering what happened. All right, so let's talk about the interview experience, right? So I just want you to think for a second. I'll give you 30 seconds. What are 5 things you'd hope a candidate would say about your interview process? So if we ask the people that applied at your organization in the last 6 months how that interview process was, what are some of the things you would hope that they would say? So they did a survey asking, Mariah says on time, friendly, absolutely, right? So here's what candidates say they want from the interview experience. A fast, organized, well-prepared process that is informative and sets expectations, right? They want smart, nice people that are aligned and have high standards as well as diverse teams. You know, diversity is one of those words that's really, kind of a scary word to be using right now, but people like that. People want to see people of diversity. So that way they know that what this place is and what this culture is about, right? A realistic preview into the culture, the work and how decisions are made. And then lastly, time for questions and answers, an honest two-way conversation. I remember I was interviewing about 5 years ago with one of the cities here in the Denver metro area for their chief HR director job. And in that process, it wasn't until it was a whole day interview. Like it was long. Like I had four different panels and we had one group interview. It was really interesting how they did it all. But it wasn't until that last Q&A session that I found out that they had gone through 3 HR directors in the last 2 years. And I was just like, wait a minute, because that totally changed how I thought about this job. So being realistic, letting them know what the culture is, letting them know what's going on. Because as a candidate, one of the first questions I'm going to ask is what are you guys struggling with? What are you guys having problems with? I'm going to ask those difficult questions because I'm interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing me, right? So we want to make sure that our candidates have that opportunity to ask those meaningful questions so they can see that, yeah, this is a really good place to work. This is someplace I want to be at. We want them to walk out of that interview excited about it. Anybody know what this is? This is back from 2000, I think it was 2004 when they did this. Is this familiar for anybody? This billboard went up all around in California, in the Bay Area. These billboards popped up, and it's a math question, right? First 10-digit prime found in consecutive digits of E. And when you did that and you punched it into your computer, it took you to another puzzle for you to solve. And when you got through that, it took you to Google. And Google said, we are trying to find people that love doing math and love solving problems. We'd love you to join our team. It stood out. It was a huge deal. Like everybody was like, what are these billboards, right? And then, people were curious and then they figured this stuff out. we want to stand out. Now, I'm not saying you have to put anything on billboards, but we want to stand out as our organizations. One of the things that we did when I was at the water utility here in Denver was anybody who came in to interview, we gave a water bottle to. It was a really nice looking water bottle, had our logo on it, our information about conservation, and it was totally on brand because anybody who's been in the metro area knows that Denver Water's constantly talking about conservation, about saving water, about not using disposable water bottles. So in our minds, we were doing two things. One, we're helping people not use disposable water bottles, and then the second, it cost us like $1.10 for this nice water bottle. Every candidate who came in got this. It was just like, wow, this is really cool. Like they gave me something to take home. We want our candidates to be excited. We want to stand out to our candidates. They're interviewing with 5 other companies. We want them to feel like, wow, that's a really good place. That's someplace I want to be at. So how are you going to figure out how to stand out to your candidates in that interview process so that people are excited about coming to work for you? And then lastly, let's get some data. And I'm a big metrics person. I teach HR analytics for CPS. I've been in the analytics field for 15 years now. And one of the things I always talk about is we got to get some data. We need to be asking our new hires after 30 days, tell us about your hiring process. What worked? What did you like? What didn't you like? What were some of the things that we could have done better? Ask your hiring managers. And I know this is scary because those hiring managers, they can be a bear. But let's ask them after the recruitment process is over. Talk to us about the hiring process. What worked? What didn't work? How did the recruiter do everything that they said they were going to do? Did they meet your needs? Did they get you the information you needed? Right? Let's collect some of that data so we can see where we're at and review that data on an ongoing basis to assess improvements or opportunities to improve. I put it in one of our questions on our recruitments. And the last question you had to answer, we'd always have like screening questions in there. And then the last question was always like, how did you find this application process? Was it easy, average, or difficult? And then I would watch that data as it came in. So that way it gave me an idea of what we can do to make this easier. Because if people are telling us that our application process is difficult, that's probably a problem. That's probably not helping us when it comes to recruiting great talent. All right, so I've gone through a ton of information. What questions can I answer? Is there anything that you want me to spend a little bit more time on or talk to, or any other questions that you have that maybe I didn't address? Well, if you think of other questions, Phil, go ahead.
I will say, go ahead. Everybody type those questions in the chat if you have any. Since those might take a little bit of time to type out, I will remind everyone that if you want the slides, if you look in the upper right, see a file section where you will be able to download the presentation and get all of those links that were shown today and be able to read all of the text on your own time. The recording will also be distributed after this webinar if you would like to watch this all again and really absorb that information. For anyone who's interested in the services of CPS HR, I would like to remind you all that CSC pool members are eligible for up to 10 free hours of human resources consulting, and then after that you can obtain their services at special rates. If we're waiting for a couple questions, I do have a question for you, Brian.
Yeah, of course.
You mentioned that nobody really knows what's going to happen in the next 10 months in terms of the job market. And most of the advice that you gave here seems pretty broadly applicable. Is there any advice that you would give that you say changes depending on whether there's high or low unemployment, different things that you would add or take away from listings depending on how the market's looking at any given time?
I think that the best thing that we can do as organizations, one of the first things that I did when I got here to Metro was we need to start figuring out how we're going to start growing our own talent, because that will fireproof you from the economy as much as you can be. If you are growing and developing people, like we have an electronics position here. It's an electronic instrumentation technician. Super hard to fill. Really difficult for us to fill those jobs. So we created a journeyman program and an associate program. And then we went to our maintenance groups and said, hey, this is a pathway for you to get into this field, because it pays really, really well. And we have seen a trickle of people. When we first started, people were like, oh, I don't know. And now we have people in that journeyman program every year joining that program to learn how to do electronics and learn how to do mechanical maintenance and some of these different things. So that way we're building that talent. We need to really focus as public sector agencies. You heard me say it before. We're never going to win when it comes to money, but where we can win is we have employees that work for us for a long period of time. We need to be building pathways and growth opportunities for our current employees to be able to grow and develop. You know, whether that's creating incentive programs around different certifications, whether that's journeyman programs to get them into certain skill sets. That's the number one way that we as an organization can help protect ourselves. Because if we can grow our own talent, we're less dependent on finding highly skilled talent in the market. And we can just be bringing in that entry-level talent, which is much easier to find, and then growing and developing them. So I think that's probably the easiest way to do that. You know, as far as, you know, what I would suggest, and it's one of the things that I've spent the last 9 years here at Metro trying to do is build those development opportunities and growth opportunities for our current employees. So that way it makes it easier for us as recruiters to fill those jobs and fill those needs. Jack asked about suggested recruiting websites. Obviously, governmentjobs.com is a good one. If you're in the water industry, we use AWWA, which American Water Works Association, which is their headquarters are actually here in Colorado. They do a really good job site. But if you're not in the, you know, water business, if you're in like parks, you know, or something like that, I'm sure there are different industry websites, and look for those and look and see what job boards they have. What's interesting is that, you know, 15, 20 years ago, everybody logged into monster.com or indeed.com, and that's where you went. So much more is starting to happen with LinkedIn and some of these other social media sites. You can even find jobs on TikTok of all places and Instagram. So, you know, I think what people are trying to do is get more creative to get those jobs out there in different ways. And the nice thing about if we're going to create a career video talking about this new job that we just opened up, or this journeyman program that we have, or whatever it is, I can put that for free on Instagram. I can put that for free on Facebook. It doesn't cost me any money. And I'm getting eyeballs, I'm getting views on those things, which is going to be really, really important for us to be successful. So hopefully that helped. Any other questions? All right. Well, if you do have other questions that you think of later, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. My name again is Brian Haggerty. I never have a problem answering questions or trying to give insights into doing this kind of stuff. And like I said, you guys really are my people. I love working in the special district. It's something that I've been passionate about for, you know, over 20 years, and I still try to do that. So if you guys have other questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll do my best to try to get you good information for that.
All right. We are coming up on time. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. I think Dana said it best in the chat. Super informative. Yeah. And then if the recording will be sent out afterwards, as I said previously. Brian, as you said, more than happy to answer any questions for you all. And I believe that will bring us to a close for today.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day.